If I told you a second income can sometimes make a family more financially vulnerable, you'd probably think I was crazy. Ryan thought so too. Ryan worked in IT. Emma worked in marketing. Together, they earned more than $130,000 a year. They had degrees, good careers, a house in a decent neighborhood, 2 reliable cars. From the outside, they looked successful, the kind of couple people assume has everything figured out. But then something strange happened. Their air conditioner broke. The repair bill was $3,000. Not ideal, but not exactly a disaster either. At least, that's what Ryan thought. After all, they earned over 6 figures. A $3,000 repair shouldn't have felt like a crisis. Yet somehow, it did. They spent the entire weekend figuring out how to pay for it. Part of it went on a credit card, part came from savings. And by the time the repair was finished, both of them felt stressed because despite earning more money than either of their parents ever had, they still felt one unexpected expense away from a problem. And that raised a question Ryan couldn't stop thinking about. How can 2 incomes feel so much like one? And more importantly, why do so many dual-income families feel financially fragile despite earning more money than ever before? The answer has nothing to do with budgeting, and almost everything to do with a trap most people don't even realize they're in. At first, Ryan assumed the problem was simple. Maybe they just needed more money. That seemed logical. After all, most financial problems can be solved with more income, right? And that's exactly what makes this so confusing, because Ryan and Emma weren't struggling in the way most people imagine. They weren't unemployed. They weren't reckless spenders. They weren't making minimum wage. They were doing everything society told them to do. Get an education, build a career, work hard, earn more. And somehow, it still didn't feel like enough. The strange part is that the math seems obvious. Imagine a family where one person earns $60,000 a year. Now, imagine a second person earning another $60,000. That's $120,000. Twice the income, twice the opportunity, twice the ability to save, at least in theory. Most people assume that adding a second income should dramatically improve a family's financial position, and for a brief moment, it does. But then something else happens. The lifestyle begins to adjust. The family qualifies for a larger mortgage. A second vehicle becomes necessary. Commuting expenses increase. Childcare enters the picture. Schedules become more complicated. Convenience spending rises. Little by little, the second income stops feeling like extra money. It starts feeling required. And once that happens, the entire game changes. Ryan didn't notice this happening. Most people don't, because it happens gradually. A better neighborhood, a slightly bigger house, a newer car, a few more subscriptions, a few more monthly payments. Nothing seems dangerous on its own, but together they create something powerful, dependence. And that's when Ryan started wondering if the problem wasn't his income. Maybe the problem was the system itself. Because when he looked at his parents' generation, something didn't add up. His father supported an entire family on one income. One paycheck covered the house, the groceries, the car, even the occasional vacation. Today, Ryan and Emma earned significantly more money. Yet somehow, they felt less secure. How is that possible? To answer that question, we need to go back a few decades. Because the story of the 2-income trap didn't start with Ryan and Emma. It started long before they were born. In 1970, the typical middle-class family looked very different. Usually one parent worked, the other stayed home. And before you say, yeah, but life was cheaper back then, you're right. That's exactly the point. Because something interesting happened over the last few decades. As more households became dual-income households, family income increased. But so did the cost of being middle class. Think about housing. Imagine you're selling a house in a neighborhood with good schools. Yesterday, most buyers were bidding with 1 income. Today, most buyers are bidding with 2. What happens? The house doesn't get bigger. The neighborhood doesn't get better overnight. But buyers suddenly have more purchasing power. And when millions of families have more purchasing power, prices rise. Not because anyone is greedy, because that's what markets do. The same thing happened all across America. Good school districts became more expensive. Desirable neighborhoods became more expensive. Family homes became more expensive. Little by little, the second income got absorbed. Not into savings, not into investments, into the cost of competing. And housing was just the beginning. There was another expense Ryan's parents barely had to think about: childcare. When one parent stayed home, childcare wasn't a monthly bill. Today, for many families, it is. And it isn't cheap. For some households, childcare costs almost as much as a mortgage payment. Think about how strange that is. A second income comes into the household, but a large chunk of that income immediately leaves the household just to make working possible. Then come the other costs. 2 commutes instead of 1. More gas, more maintenance, more insurance, more meals eaten on the go, More convenient spending, more services that save time because nobody has enough time anymore, and none of these expenses seem outrageous individually. That's what makes the trap so difficult to see. No single decision causes the problem. It's the combination. The second income arrives, and then an entire ecosystem of expenses grows around it. Ryan started noticing this when he looked at his own life. His mortgage was based on 2 incomes. His cars were based on 2 incomes. His lifestyle was based on 2 incomes. Almost every major financial decision they had made assumed both paychecks would continue forever. And that's when a disturbing thought crossed his mind. What if the second income wasn't making them more secure? What if it was making them more dependent? Because the moment your life requires 2 incomes, losing one becomes a disaster, and that's exactly where the trap snaps shut. Let's do something Ryan never did before. Let's follow Emma's paycheck. Emma earns $60,000 a year. Sounds pretty good, right? Most people hear that number and think, that's a massive boost to the household. And on paper, it is. But let's see how much of that $60,000 actually improves Ryan and Emma's financial position. First come taxes, federal taxes, state taxes, payroll taxes. By the time Emma sees the money, roughly $18,000 is gone. That leaves about $42,000. Still sounds great. Now let's talk about childcare. Because Ryan and Emma have 2 young children, and both parents work full time. Someone has to watch the kids. Depending on where you live, childcare for 2 children can easily cost $20,000 to $30,000 per year. Let's use $24,000. Now Emma's $60,000 income has become $18,000. Next comes transportation, a second commute, gas, insurance, maintenance, repairs, registration. Let's call it $7,000 per year. Now we're down to $11,000. But we're still not done. Because when both adults work full time, time becomes incredibly scarce. Ryan and Emma order more takeout, buy more prepared meals, pay for convenience, use services that save time because neither of them has much left at the end of the day. Let's call that another $5,000 per year. Now we're down to $6,000. Emma earned $60,000, but after taxes, childcare, transportation, and the hidden costs of maintaining 2 careers, the household is keeping roughly $6,000. That's about $500 per month. Think about that. One parent worked an entire year, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks, and after all the associated costs, the household is financially ahead by about $500 a month. Now, does that mean Emma shouldn't work? Absolutely not. Maybe she loves her career. Maybe she wants the long-term career growth. Maybe the benefits are valuable. Maybe re-entering the workforce later would be difficult. Those things matter, but that's not the point. The point is this. Most families think they're making decisions based on an extra $60,000. In reality, they're often making decisions based on a fraction of that amount. And yet they buy houses, cars, and lifestyles based on the full household income. That's where the trap begins. And that's where Ryan finally saw the real problem. The problem wasn't Emma's income. The problem was what they had built around it. Because while the second income was adding roughly $6,000 of real financial benefit, their entire lifestyle depended on the full $120,000. The mortgage, the cars, the insurance, the subscriptions, the vacations. Almost every major financial decision had been made using both incomes. And that's when Ryan had a disturbing realization. They weren't living on 1 income plus a second income. They were living on 2 incomes. Completely. Which meant losing either one wasn't inconvenient. It was a crisis. Imagine Emma loses her job. The childcare expense disappears. The commute expense disappears. Some costs go away, but the mortgage doesn't. The car payments don't. The insurance doesn't. Most of the big expenses remain. And suddenly the household isn't missing $6,000, it's missing $60,000. That's the trap. Because the second income may only improve the family's financial position by a small amount, but the lifestyle built around it often requires the entire paycheck. Ryan's parents never had this problem. If his father lost his job, the family had a backup plan. His mother could enter the workforce, not ideal, but possible. The second income was sitting in reserve. Like an emergency parachute, Ryan and Emma had already deployed their parachute every month. Just to keep the system running, there was no backup plan left. And once Ryan saw it that way, he couldn't unsee it. For years, he had believed that 2 incomes automatically meant more security. Now he realized something uncomfortable. 2 incomes can create the appearance of security, while actually reducing flexibility. Because flexibility is what protects you when life happens. And life always happens. Someone gets sick, a child needs extra attention, a parent needs care, a layoff happens, a recession arrives, burnout shows up. The question isn't whether something unexpected will happen. The question is whether your finances can survive when it does. And that's where many dual income families are far more fragile than they appear. From the outside, they look successful, but underneath, everything depends on 2 paychecks arriving every 2 weeks, without interruption, for years, maybe decades, and that's a much riskier position than most people realize. So what did Ryan do? Did Emma quit her job? No, that wasn't the lesson. The lesson wasn't that 2 incomes are bad. The lesson was that dependence is dangerous. Ryan realized something important. For years, he had been optimizing for income, not flexibility. Those aren't the same thing. A household earning $200,000 a year isn't automatically secure. A household earning $90,000 isn't automatically vulnerable. The real question is much simpler. How much of your lifestyle is optional? Because optional things can be adjusted. Required things cannot. Ryan and Emma started making decisions differently. Not dramatic decisions, intentional ones. They paid down debt, built a larger emergency fund, avoided upgrading their lifestyle every time their income increased, and most importantly, they stopped treating every dollar they earned as spendable, because that's what had gotten them into trouble in the first place. Every raise had become a bigger mortgage, a nicer car, a more expensive lifestyle. The pattern looked normal, but it quietly made them more dependent every year, so they flipped the strategy. Instead of asking, what can we afford? They started asking, what can we comfortably afford on one income if we absolutely had to? That question changed everything, because suddenly the goal wasn't maximizing lifestyle, it was maximizing resilience. The goal wasn't appearing successful, it was becoming difficult to break, and over time, something interesting happened. The stress started disappearing, not because they earned more money, but because they needed less of it. For the first time in years, they had margin, breathing room, options, the ability to handle surprises without panic. And that's what financial security actually feels like. Not a bigger paycheck, not a bigger house, not a newer car. Margin, the ability to absorb life's punches without falling apart. And maybe that's the biggest misunderstanding in personal finance. Most people think wealth is about how much money comes in, but wealth is often about how much pressure your finances can survive. Ryan spent years believing 2 incomes automatically created security. Now he understood the truth. Security doesn't come from having 2 paychecks. It comes from not needing both of them. Because the 2 income trap isn't really about income, it's about dependence. And the families that build lasting wealth aren't always the ones earning the most. They're the ones who've preserved the most flexibility, the ones who've kept some breathing room between what they earn and what they spend, the ones who can survive when life doesn't go according to plan, because eventually, life never does. Before you go, I want you to think about one question. If one income in your household disappeared tomorrow, would your lifestyle survive or would it collapse? Because the answer to that question tells you far more about your financial security than your salary ever will. And that's the 2 income trap nobody talks about.